Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of the final Tarzan silent movie, Tarzan the Tiger. This is a 15-chapter serial adapting Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. So most of the silent movies we've been looking at have been absolutely amazing. They've been incredibly faithful to the novels, but in my opinion, this is the best of the lot. This is one of my favorite Tarzan movies of all time. And a big part of that is La of Opar. For those of you who don't know, La is the high priestess and ruler of a city called Opar. It's a lost colony of Atlantis, and the men there have intermingled with apes to the point where they've devolved into beastmen. But La, she's still a pretty well-formed, beautiful woman, and when she sees Tarzan, she decides Tarzan must be her mate, whether he wants to or not. And so she's essentially kind of this stalker chick who won't take no for an answer, and sometimes she'll try to have Tarzan captured or try to sacrifice Jane to the flaming god in order to get Tarzan to like her. But there's also times when Tarzan will actually save La or ally himself with her. But then at the drop of a hat, at any point, La may just get tired of Tarzan rejecting her and strap him to an altar and try to sacrifice him to the sun god. La is a crazy, sexy mess of a human being and an absolutely wonderful villainess who inspired so many characters that would follow her. And she is one of Burroughs' best creations. And all of that is so perfectly captured in an amazing performance by Mademoiselle Kithnu, who so perfectly embodies La without ever being able to utter a single word in this silent movie. It is an absolutely amazing performance that, in my opinion, really steals the show. I wasn't able to find a whole lot about Mademoiselle Kithnu. Wikipedia says she was of European and Indian descent, and she was an actress and dancer. And she did star in some other movies that I could find. Here she is in Mare Nostrum. However, if you look this movie up, you're going to find a lot of places that say that Mademoiselle Kithnu did not play this role, or that it was a stage name used by an actress named Lillian Worth. Now, Lillian Worth did play La of Opar, but that was in the 1921 Tarzan serial called The Adventures of Tarzan. I do not believe she reprised the role for Tarzan the Tiger. Now, I haven't seen anyone claim that Mademoiselle Kithnu just didn't exist, right? So the theory seems to be that Lillian Worth, in order to play a role that she'd already played in a previous movie, would take a stage name, but would also take a name used by another actress. And this is particularly weird because Lillian Worth already had a stage name. It was Lillian Worth. Her actual married name was Lillian Wiggins. Plus, you can look at the performance, and they're just night and day between these two movies, the portrayal of La, and Mademoiselle Kithnu was supposed to be a dancer, and you could see the actress who plays La in Tarzan the Tiger was extremely talented in the dance numbers that they did in the Temple of Opar, right? And in my opinion, these two actresses don't look alike. Here's what they look like when they're not sacrificing someone to the sun god. And here they are with their respective Las that they played. On the left is Lillian Worth and the La from The Adventures of Tarzan. On the right is Mademoiselle Kithnu with the La from Tarzan the Tiger. I'll let you guys make up your own mind, but to me, this is pretty clear. They are two different actresses, and Mademoiselle Kithnu played La in this movie. All right, so now that we've solved that Scooby-Doo mystery, let's talk about the book that this movie adapts. Tarzan the Tiger adapts Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar. And so Jewels of Opar opens with Tarzan's estate in financial trouble, so he goes to Opar to get some treasure to help with that. And things go terribly wrong. La gets involved. Tarzan gets a hit on the head that causes him to lose his memory and revert back to his ape-like self from his childhood days. Meanwhile, Arab raiders led by Ahmed Zek attack Tarzan's estate and kidnap Jane. And of course, Jane being Jane, escapes and has her own little adventure trying to get away from Ahmed Zek and all the bad guys. And in the middle of all this is our main villain, Albert Werper, who set all of this up to try to steal the treasure from Tarzan. And yeah, there are lions. There's usually lions in Tarzan novels. And while, in my opinion, this is not the best Burroughs Tarzan novel, it is one that really does showcase all of these really classic elements that he does so well in his novels. And that may be why this just really lends itself to longer adaptations. So when Gold Key adapted it, they did it not in one issue or two issues, but in 3 issues, which was very, very unusual for the time. And when Roy Thomas did his Tarzan run over at Marvel, he spent most of the run adapting Jewels of Opar. This just really lends itself to long-form adaptations. But no movie adaptation would be complete without a really great Tarzan, and this movie found a fantastic Tarzan, the best of the silent movie era, in my opinion, in Frank Merrill. Frank Merrill was a stuntman for Elmo Lincoln in previous movies. He's got the physique. He does a great job with the acting and portrayal of the character. And, you know, the only real detractors to this movie are A, the title, which I think, you know, some producer thought sounded good, and B, the look of Tarzan. You know, he kind of looks like Fred Flintstone, but Frank Merrill makes it work. And he just portrays Tarzan with the memory loss, which Jane calls jungle madness, so well. He just knocks it out of the ballpark. And one thing to note is that this is not Frank Merrill's first time as Tarzan. It's just the first time that we can actually watch. There was a previous movie that came out called Tarzan the Mighty. Unfortunately, that is lost to time, but that was his first time as Tarzan. And some of the cast actually had different roles in that movie. I'm not sure if it was good or not, but it certainly had a great cast, and I would have loved to have watched it, but unfortunately, it is lost to time. And one thing I forgot to mention in my review of Tarzan and the Golden Lion is that in these late silent movies, they start integrating some sound in there, and we're talking like, you know, yells and growls of animals and stuff like that. And so this movie took it to a whole nother level and finally gave audiences the first Tarzan yell, the first time they could ever hear Tarzan's yell. And they played up for all it's worth in that second episode of this serial. They do it over and over again in the scene, but you gotta put yourself back in the shoes of that audience back in 1928. This is the first time they're ever hearing it. And you gotta imagine the kids just going nuts in the theater as they hear that yell over and over again for the first time. Natalie Kingston plays Jane, and it's really remarkable how many times they can find an actress with a similar look but is just so damn good at performing. And she is fantastic. Now, this is a softer Jane. I wish we could have got a little more jungle survival and a little more Jane, you know, pulling a knife or a gun on her captor, but it's done as this kind of soft, virtuous Jane for a reason. So the big change that they make to the novel is that Jane and Tarzan are together for most of this story. And so the story becomes Jane struggling to make her husband remember who she is. This is Jane's fight to regain Tarzan's love because he doesn't even remember who she is. And of course, this leaves him vulnerable to Law's seduction, and, you know, Jane becomes this kind of good, virtuous wife versus Law's craziness. And I think that change was a good call. As good as Burroughs' novels are, sometimes they really can feel like just a random series of bad things happening to the protagonists. You know, they just run from faction to faction, danger to danger. This gives it a heart. It gives it one story arc that ties everything together, and it just really works. I love this to death, this story of this anguished wife trying to reclaim her husband's memory and bring him back into her life. Al Ferguson plays Albert Werper, and Werper is not your traditional villain who has henchmen and stuff like that. He is basically a lion snake. He basically makes everyone, whether they're a villain or a hero, think they're his friend or ally, and then he'll stab them in the back or betray them, or they'll betray him, and it just becomes this series of double crosses and backstabbing that you just never know exactly what's going to happen. It's just very entertaining to watch. He's a fantastic villain. Honorable mention for villainy goes to Ahmed Zek, who does a great job, and he's played by Sheldon Lewis, and it is a white guy in makeup, but that is super common for portrayals of Middle Eastern characters in movies. Even to this day, you can look at Exodus, Gods and Kings, or Gods of Egypt for modern day examples of that. There were several things in the novel that didn't make it into the movie. There was a completely separate faction that was hunting Ahmed Zek that they left out. There were some lawmen hunting Albert Werper they left out. There were some apes who helped Tarzan at various moments that didn't make it in. And then there was an entire subplot with both Mugambi and with the Wazari they were really the unsung heroes of the novel. They really saved the day as far as the Tarzan getting the gold of Opar and stuff like that. But I do understand why all of that was left out. They really wanted to focus it on Tarzan and Jane as your protagonist, and Ahmed Zek and Albert Werper and La as your antagonists. And I think that really, really worked. And, you know, as much as I would have loved to have seen Mugambi and the Wazari in there, the Wazari did get a fantastic portrayal in the previous movie, Tarzan and the Golden Lion. And you know, I think it's just a better movie that when it's focused, and I think they did that well. So my only real criticism of the movie is that the ending is anticlimactic to me, but it's also probably the fact that I am sad on that last chapter that it is ending, because it's such a great ride, and every time I watch this, I just look forward to every chapter. This is really just captures Burroughs in a nutshell. Everything you ever needed to know about why Burroughs' Tarzan works is in here. So Tarzan the Tiger gets my highest possible recommendation. You just have to get over the silly name. There are no tigers in Africa. They do throw one in a few seconds here and there to try to justify the name. But other than that, this is an amazing adaptation of Jewels of Opar, an amazing ending to the silent movie era for Tarzan. So there is going to be one more review I'm going to be doing, and it will be a movie that will actually have some talking in it, some sound. And this is going to be Burroughs' final attempt to bring his vision of Tarzan to the big screen. However, in the making of this movie, everything is going to go wrong. But that doesn't mean the product ended up being a bad movie. And so next time, we're going to take a look at The New Adventures of Tarzan. See ya.